Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Cats and Bolts Podcast. 3, 2, 1.
Whoa. Hey, welcome, everybody. Welcome inside. Your favorite hockey podcast, at least Florida's favorite and most watched NHL hockey podcast, is right here, the Cats and Bolts Podcast. Coming to you from Podcast Junkies. How about that? Right here in beautiful downtown Boca Raton, Florida. Benny boy, we're going to call this the Passing the Torch episode. Do you want to write that down right now? It's the Passing the Torch episode because the Florida Panthers are moving on to round 2 after exercising the demons, beating the Tampa Bay Lightning in 5 games in round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. I'm one half of the show, Rod Peterson. She is the better half of the show, Sarina Taylor. I'm going to be kissing your butt for 30 minutes. You're going to love it. Get used to it. Coming to you on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube here from Podcast Junkies for DraftKings, Beach House, Pompano, and Boresco. I put it out, asked for viewer questions. We've got like 14, so I told Benny we're going to go a little longer than normal. But I'm going to open with this, Sarina. Number one, not a caveat, but I want to say this. I said the Panthers in 6. Before we did last week's show, the round 1 predictions, I went to Sarina in the kitchen and I said, I'm taking Florida, so you got to take Tampa. Pick how long. She took one for the team. She's a team gal. I'm not sure you even really wanted to go with Tampa.
To be honest, my gut said Florida was
So
gonna
there
win.
you go.
But for the sake of the show, and to be fair, I really truly felt like it was possible that Tampa could have won, but it was going to take 7 games.
You weren't married to the Lightning winning this, is what I
Not
want to point out to everybody, and that's why she hates making predictions, and it wasn't fair of me. I was very confident Florida would win, and she kind of had a feeling they would too, but for the sake of the show, she went with Tampa. So here we go. The Panthers are moving on to face either Boston or Toronto. As we sit here right now in round 2, we don't know, but thoughts on this series, Sarina? Everybody wants to know I got a lot. I'll start with you. What did you think?
Well, I think it was pretty obvious from the first 15 minutes of the series that Florida was the better team. They played really well, and we saw Tampa just not pull it together. By the time they got to game 4, Tampa really played well. That's the Tampa Bay Lightning that I said at the start of the year. This is going to be Tampa's last kick at the can with this group of guys. You can only win so many Stanley Cups, and you can only be good for so long. This year is going to be a telltale year. They have the ability and the skill to do it, but whether or not they're going to, this is going to be a telltale year. And I think that this was an indicative year for them, and the season was exactly how their entire year went. Probably underplayed a little bit. I feel like they really didn't achieve much from Stamkos. When we talked about it, who was going to be the difference makers, I said Stamkos. And if you look at Braden Point, when we were talking on the episode last week, I said if Braden Point picks it up, they're going to be fine. Game 4, Braden Point played unbelievable, but every other game he was not a significant factor. So Florida just was the better team overall in the entire series.
They were the better team all year, and that's why they had home ice. But I think we were all surprised it only went 5 games. But here's the one thing that stands out to me was the respect. I've never seen a series in the playoffs, I've been doing this a long time, where these two teams were tripping over each other to say how much they respect the other, and they meant it. It wasn't a not wanting to give bulletin board material. They talked about how much, the Panthers talked about how much they respected John Cooper and Stamkos and all those guys and Victor Hedman, and they did. What did John Cooper say after game 1? He sat in the news conference room and said, look, Florida's an exceptional team. We have to find a way to get through that, or something like that. There was a lot of respect there. These two teams don't hate each other, and that's why I was sitting there going, why do I not want these teams to play each other in the playoffs? This is why. They don't hate each other. The fans of both teams respect each other. I don't know if it'll always be that way, but it was a little weird, right? It's not like a traditional rival.
Well, what I think was really strange is we saw a John Cooper that we've never seen. John Cooper has exhibited that he stands by his team. And what I mean by that is when we watched him when they would play the Leafs and they would lose, he adamantly refuses to give the other team any respect. I'm like, you were outplayed miserably and you still found reasons to talk trash about the Leafs. I was adamant that John Cooper is just not a respectful person. Come full swing this year, I saw a completely different side of him. And when we sat in that press conference after the game, I was like, what? Who is this person? You know, I don't understand. It's just maybe it's time for a change there. Maybe there was, no, I'm not saying that. Let me be clear. John Cooper is a fantastic coach. I think sometimes you just know. You just know when your time is, things need to change, whether it's him or the players or whatever.
We're foreshadowing into some questions here from the viewers, so we'll move into that right away. But I'll just say I thoroughly enjoyed sitting in the back of those news conference rooms. Thank you, Panthers and Lightning, which, by the way, they both treat us so great. Look at these sunglasses I brought back from Tampa, Sarina. And Dunkin' Donuts, thank you, too. You look so impressed at them. Yeah, I like them a lot. They'll be on the set. The teams they treat us so well. I didn't want to see one of them lose, I guess was my point. But I enjoyed listening to what Paul Maurice and John Cooper had to say in the news conferences after. They were very thoughtful and, as I said, very respectful. And you don't see that all the time, not from every coach. Can we just talk about officiating for a second? John Cooper. Cooper did allude to this. How you could rip officiating without ripping officiating? He did it in a very artful way. He basically said, Sarina, you weren't sitting there, but after the series, he goes, the whole series came down to game one, and the winning goal came on a penalty call, which, right? What?
What do you know?
What
do you know? The one thing I've been saying for years, besides the fact that the officiating is absolute garbage in this league, especially in the playoffs, every time there's a shitty penalty, the other team is going to score. And I turned to you in the press box and I said, but didn't even have to say it. They scored and Rod turned to me and goes, they always score on the bad calls. Correct.
It was a winning goal.
And what did we say last week? Both of the coaches knew in what they were saying after. The difference in this game was a power play goal. They knew it was a garbage call. And now that the series is over, they're coming out and saying it. He's not wrong. And the officiating has been so bad. I'll preface it with the fact that Florida was the better team and they deserve to win. This was a 5-game series, not a 7-game series. There's a reason for that. However, I said 2 years ago, Edmonton was playing the Kings in the playoffs. It ended up going to 7 games. They suspended Darnell Nurse on defense for Edmonton for absolutely no reason. It was an atrocious penalty call, subsequent suspension. And the one thing that I said was this: I'm glad I wasn't on the other side of that, because when my team recovers from this, they're going to be hard to beat. I would not want my team to win based on some crappy, chintzy officiating. Whether it's the refs or the people upstairs, the people in Toronto, it's been garbage for years. And I would not want to be the team that won because they benefited from garbage officiating. That's what it was for the Panthers last year. That's what it's going to be again this year. You can take that to the bank and cash it. Something big is going to happen that ruins a team this year, and it's going to be worse than what we've already seen.
Bravo, but it wouldn't be the first time, and the Panthers don't have to apologize for anything. Paul Maurice, they don't care. I've been with teams that have won championships. We didn't care. We did get the breaks and all the calls. So what?
Sure, it's not Paul Maurice's fault.
No.
It's not their fault. It's not. But when you benefit from something like that, the reffing, the one word that I hear, whether it's broadcasters, coaches, scouts, the word they use is egregious. Yeah. The calls have been egregious. To use that word, I've never, other than the last 3 years, I don't know about you, I've never heard more coaches, players, fans, scouts, but people in actual hockey complaining about the officiating like they have been this year and last year and the year before. Let's be honest. That Tkachuk thing in Game 4 was a penalty shot. It was a penalty shot. How do you not call that? And even Henrik Lundqvist sat on the desk and said, if that's not a penalty shot, I don't know what is. What are we even watching here? And my point is this. The people in Florida think they're always, the Panthers fans think they're always hard done by the officiating. Newsflash, you're not. You're not. Everybody comes, well, the Panthers had less power plays than the Lightning or whatever. The Panthers are the most penalized team in the NHL. It's about timing. It's about the right calls. There's a difference between calling a ticky-tack, tripping, or interference and a goaltender interference that we saw was complete garbage 2 times the other night. It's not right. And I stand by the fact that this league is going to absolute dog shit because it comes from the top. We know Gary Bettman sits down the officials and says, you guys need to call everything. It's the playoffs. And so what do? They call everything. Let them play.
Yeah. I mean, I hate talking about officiating, but I understand all the fans do, and she certainly does, and your dad. So I'll listen to it. I'm not going to participate in it because it's not changing, and the league's coming off its best revenue year ever, the most highest ratings ever. So they're going to sit there and say they're fine.
Hey.
And I'm not going to argue it.
What a coincidence, though. The league's bragging, this is our highest revenue year. This is whatever. Think about it like this. If the NHL could have every single playoff series go to 7 games, they'd be much happier. So what happens when they go to Tampa? They don't want to embarrass the Lightning. They make egregious calls against the Panthers. There was a call against the Panthers. I was like, that is not a penalty in any way, shape, or form. And I'll be fair on both sides. There were some terrible calls in Tampa against the Panthers. No doubt about it. But it's like they want to extend. They want to extend. They want to extend. It's almost like, well, we don't want this series to end in 4 because then they're going to sit. I don't think it's quite that dialed in. But you guys, they want to extend every series as long as they can. You can see it. Yeah. It was when they came back here. It was like, okay, I think we're okay with the Panthers winning now. They make more money. The NHL is a business. That's the bottom line. It's a business. They don't care about the fans. Yeah. They don't care about the players.
Let's move on. I hate this discussion.
Well,
I'm not saying you're wrong. Just whatever. So to the viewer questions, Ben Cobb says, what's your ideal matchup? He's talking Boston or Toronto, and he says, have a good week, guys. There's a bit of a theme of this throughout the questions. You went through and saw them on our Instagram. I don't think they want to play Boston again. Boston is already extra motivated because of choking against the Panthers last year, and the Leafs are an absolute grease fire. And although you don't know what you're going to get with a grease fire, that's why it's called a grease fire, I'd rather play the Leafs from a Panthers perspective.
I would agree with that 100%. We saw the Leafs imploding on their own bench the other night. There's a serious problem there. I think the fact that they won game, what would that be, 5? The fact they won game 5 in overtime, Austin Matthews wasn't playing. I saw Max Domi I haven't seen in a while. He was playing with Matthews for a while before when Marner was hurt. So Domi was playing really well. And sometimes, when your guys get hurt, you kind of rally around and you win, but Boston is not going to lose to Toronto. And if I was the Panthers, I would absolutely want to play the Leafs.
Yeah, but you're probably going to get Boston, just so you know, Panthers fans. Okay, Ben, Christian, Kit, do you guys have a helmet back there for the next question? Because I'd like to wear a helmet. Do you have a helmet? No, I don't actually want it. It's just a figurative question.
There are some helmets over there.
Yeah, there are. Now that I say, hey, look at Kit comes jumping out of the back. I'm just joking, bro, but thank you. Jamie wants to know, it's a tie-in to the next question as well. Will Sarina now cheer for the Panthers? Because they think you're a Lightning fan and you predicted them. We've explained why you did. Will you now cheer for the Florida Panthers?
No. My team is still in the playoffs. I mean, for all intents and purposes of this podcast, we kind of like to take sides. Rod's kind of more the Panthers guy. I'm the Lightning guy kind of thing. That's generally where we stand on this whole thing. But no, I will not be.
Oh, that was far easier than the discussion we had at home yesterday, which rolls into Ruth's comment. You live here now, you can cheer for the Panthers.
And what was my reply to that? I burst out laughing at
then
first.
Then you got mad.
And then I was like,
that's why I want
what?
The helmet.
But I said to Rod, can you imagine telling every New Yorker that lives here now that they have to become a Dolphins fan because they live here now? Hey, it doesn't work like that. I was born with the Oilers in my blood. Not like the people here. I don't care if the Panthers have been around as long as some of these people are alive. It's not the same. It's not the same. You don't choose your team. You don't choose your team. Essentially, they choose you. It's what you grow up around. My dad was a Bruins fan, but he always liked the Oilers. And when I was a kid growing up, we got to watch the Oilers a lot. And it's a local team, essentially, from where I'm from. And it's in your blood. You can't just, I live here. I'm going to be, dude, I'd be a fan of so many teams it wouldn't even be funny.
Like me. So now you say she's had 24 hours to calm down. She says the Oilers are in her blood. I've had several blood transfusions. So I'm a bit of I'm a whatever works guy. Cheer for whoever. You want to cheer for the Oilers? Cheer for the Oilers. I don't dog her about it. It affects my life and then it affects her mood. And I don't like that whether the Oilers win or lose affects my life. But You know what I mean? But I'm just.
I do know what you mean. How the fuck do you think I feel?
It is right. It is. But I don't care. I've got a long.
But here's what I don't understand is like, why does anyone care who I cheer for? I don't run around being like,
I can't answer
and
that.
listen, Ruth, I do appreciate the question. This is totally not to bag on you at all. Like, I do appreciate that you guys reach out and you ask these questions. But from my standpoint, like, I don't care who people cheer for. You know, like, it's just, I don't care. I don't care if this person, our friend Brent Woltman, who's from where we're from, I'm like, how is this guy a Panthers fan? You don't grow up in Canada and become a Panthers fan. So I was like, Brent, what happened? Like, who did you cheer for growing up? He's like, oh, I was a Flyers fan because his dad is from Philly. Well, that's an easy jump.
Yeah,
Despise the Flyers.
So, anyways, that's the thing. She's never going to cheer for anybody from Edmonton. I feel like this will be a theme because we're going to do this show for years. You're always going to be asked to cheer for either the Panthers or the Lightning, and we're always going to be explaining why you won't.
It's just a little different. It's like, if all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, like I'll root for the Dolphins if they're playing over somebody else, but I'm not a self-proclaimed Dolphins fan. I don't go to the games. I don't necessarily go out of my way to sit down and watch a thing. But it's because a lot of my friends, and I don't really have an NFL team. So it's not really in my blood. So I'm like, okay, I like to see my friends happy. Yeah. But baseball, I'm a Blue Jays fan. I'm not a Marlins fan because I live here. I don't mind them, but I'm not.
I love that it comes up so much. And by the way, as we prepare to move on here, this is what I enjoy. So she has her thing, with the Oilers. I have mine where, like, Anthony and Justin came up to me the other day. Game 5, I went real early to Sunrise. I went to the mall, and my phone went off, and a guy, Anthony, wrote me. He's a viewer of this show. I'd never met him before. And he goes, did I just see you in the food court at Sawgrass Mills? And I'm like, yes, you did. I'm going to head back there and try and find you. And he goes, no, I'm walking to the rink now, but maybe I'll see you at the game. I go to the game, go down to the glass for warm-up. He's literally right beside me, taps me on the shoulder. He's like, I'm the guy that was at the food court. And I'm like, God shot. And then him and Justin sat there and told me about their fandom of the Panthers and how they were worried when this team sucked so bad and nobody was going to the games that they were going to move and become the Arizona Coyotes, what they did. And I have all day. I find that fascinating. And they all say, I hear it all the time, and you've heard it. You've been with me. People say, man, did you guys start that podcast at a great time? Because the Panthers are coming up. They're popular. They're winning. And I'm like, hey, it wasn't planned. So lucky us.
No, I think the real reason we wanted to start this podcast is we were driving across Western Canada last year. If you've ever done it, there's nothing else to do but
boring.
Talk. So we were like, we need to start a podcast. There's just no hockey information. Like, not really. Like, you have to seek it out. Believe me, it's different. You can't turn your head in July in Canada and not see or hear something hockey related. But you have to look for it. And so we're like, what can we do to kind of bring our own flair where we're not necessarily homers or whatever it happens to be? We can talk about the whole league. Nobody here talking about the whole league. If they touch on the Panthers on page 5 of the sports section, it's a shock. So we're like, what can we do to do this? And it's engaged so many different people. But all the people that we've come down to be our guests have even said, coaches and former players are like, this is such a great thing you guys are doing because there's no information for these people out there.
It's entertaining and it's very well done. Don't let it go to your heads at Podcast Junkies. Ben and Christian are here. And Kit, too. You guys all do a great job. It's as Billy Lindsay said one day, he's like, this is big. I don't think people realize this is big.
Well, I think even when we had Dale Talon on here, he was like, wow, what a setup. What a cool setup. They do it on these little camera, whatever. And it's like, and it just goes to show you how important it is to the hockey people that live here that we get the word out because they're willing to come down here on their own time, unless they're golfing, like Dale usually is, to be on our show.
And Chick.
Yeah. But, Chikrin's, I think he's in Scotland right now, golfing literally St. Andrews. But these guys, they know how important it is. When Chikrin brought his dad wanted to come hang out. Because his dad lives in Ottawa, there's hockey everywhere. When you come here, it's really hard to find it. And it's so important for us to be able to connect. And that's why I like when the people reach out.
I like it a lot. And the thing is, I love that you can turn it off. So when you go to seek it, you can get it. But when you don't want it, you're good. In Edmonton, anywhere in Canada, you cannot get away from it.
No.
And to me, that's too much. And I also want to say something about Tampa. Little Lightning fans came up. Brent knows because he saw it. They watched this show. That's why I'm not marrying myself to the Panthers, because if it was the Lightning that won this series and went to the Stanley Cup, I'd like to be talking about the Lightning the whole way. What?
No, you're right. The whole point was to get Florida hockey podcast, right? To get everybody involved. But one thing I think I did discover, maybe a little bit more since we started this, is the disconnect between the two teams. It could be Tampa could be on another planet. You have no idea that these teams are only 3 hours apart because there is essentially no rivalry. The Panthers have lost and now they won, and so whatever, but it's a completely different.
I also don't know, Sarina, if there ever will be. I don't know what it would take, but the one thing I did enjoy the stuff going back and forth, and I know you did too, the fan that had the sign right behind John Cooper that said Tampa smells. Like there was some funny stuff.
Yeah, some funny.
Like, I can't share that. I don't want to tick off the Lightning. You know what I mean? So we're figuring this out. But the thing is, that's why we call it Florida's favorite hockey show, not South Florida's or whatever.
When we had predicted the series and Rod made me pick the Lightning.
I did. It's a fact.
He did, because I don't pick. But somebody had we shared it on one of the social media pages, and someone wrote, "Go home, Sarina, you're drunk." I laughed so hard. A friend of mine shared that with me, one of our viewers, and I laughed so hard I couldn't stop laughing. Like, Rod, you have to see this. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because he spelled my name wrong, which would be like, it looked like he was typing drunk. It was all lowercase, and it was also, that's why it was really funny. But it was good.
Well, that's the thing with the popularity grows. Comments you don't necessarily like, but it is what it is. So, Jersey Jim just has a comment, not a question. He says Carter Verhaeghe is Mr. Playoff. You love him. He's your favorite Panther. So do you want to take that comment?
I mean, I don't think that's a surprise. I feel like that's kind of how he was last year. That's just kind of the player that he is. He always tends to come in hot when it's clutch. Whether it's a regular season, they go to overtime, or they just need that goal. He's just the guy to do it.
DJ Genesis watches everything we do. He's the Panthers' official in-house DJ. Shout out DJ Genesis.
We love him. If you guys have not
really
checked
cool.
him out at a game, he's the nicest person. He's so fun. He's so engaging. Such a big supporter. So when you're at the game, he's always bumping it.
He wrote in and says, how much did Florida grow up by beating their cross-state rivals in 5 games? It's a great question, DJ Genesis, and you probably know the answer to that. But Monday's Game 5, it was a palpable emotion in the arena. Like, to me, the history doesn't really matter per se. Matthew Tkachuk had never played Tampa in the playoffs before. Do you know what I mean? This was the first for him. So he's 1-0 against the Lightning. But I get that the Panthers franchise had never beaten the Lightning before, and that was big. I think it was their first ever series clinched at home, too. The handshake on home ice. It was just an emotional night in the facility. And I heard Randy Moeller on the pregame on WQAM before the game saying, if the Panthers win this series, because he wasn't putting the cart ahead of the horse either. He gets it.
Stupid. Yeah.
He knows. He was like, if the Panthers win this series, the torch will be passed. And I think we can officially say now the torch has been passed.
Couple things on that. Anytime you win a playoff series, you get playoff experience, and that makes a huge difference down the road. There are teams that just have playoff experience and teams that don't. You look at the Oilers, they have so much playoff experience in their history. You look at the Lightning. That's why I didn't want to count out the Lightning, because they have very skilled players, but they also have a lot of playoff experience of recent that they can bring to the table. You can't count that out. So the more playoff series they win, the more experience they're going to get, the better it's going to be. I totally lost my train of thought on the second point I had.
Passing the torch. Yeah.
Here's why. The Panthers are going like this, and the Lightning are going like this. It's like I said at the start of the year. The Panthers are, the Lightning are, this is their last kick at the can. They're going to prove this year if this is actually what works and what doesn't. And I think that the Lightning proved, like I said earlier in the show, they're going to be Pittsburgh in 10 years.
We really need to speed this up. It's been good, though. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I absolutely love doing this show so much. Amy with a question. She says, when will Stoley start? She's talking about Anthony Stolarz. And she says, why hasn't he played so far in the playoffs? Appreciate the question, Amy, but this is playoff time. This is not where you have to play your backup every 6th or 7th game. Bob's going to play every minute, every game. Look at the saves that he made. Potentially the greatest save in Stanley Cup playoff history was in Game 2. I was sitting beside you along with Mike from Tampa. You're not going to see Anthony Stolarz again unless Bob gets hurt or he blows up.
Correct. The difference is this. When you're playing in the playoffs, there's two types of teams. There are some teams like Boston. They have 2 goaltenders. They play them both. That is not the Panthers. The Panthers have their starter and their backup. That's the difference. That's why he's not going to see the ice again. Why would he? Why would you switch up your goaltending if you have a solid starter? Again, Boston, they'll switch it because they don't have a solid starter. And it's rare that happens. It's rare that happens, that there's a team will start. Edmonton had it with Grant Fuhr and Andy Moog. So, it happens, but tradition and experience says that one guy is going to take it to the top.
You won't see Stoley. Question 7, Alex says, who would you rather play in round 2? We've established that. We've both said Toronto. Fabian says, where will Stammer end up next year? John Cooper said it. I was sitting 30 feet from him. He said, he belongs here, Tampa Bay. And he goes, I don't envision this will be a long conversation. He goes, I shouldn't assume anything. Steven Stamkos is a Lightning.
The only reasons, I want to say the only way Steven Stamkos wouldn't stay in Tampa is if he didn't want to, which you never know what a guy is thinking. I think he has entertained the idea of potentially playing on a Canadian team. So you don't really know what he's thinking. You don't know what the contract negotiations are going to be about. But look at how they kind of blindsided him at the start of the year. I don't put anything past them anymore. If he left, I wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe the whole band breaks up, which we're getting to. Hang on, further down. We just got a few questions left. Jaden asks, do you think Boston or Florida will win? Well, number one, we're not there yet, so let's wait till next week. This series hasn't even been confirmed yet. Unidecker says, when will Bob get his award? Bob hasn't got the award. He's a finalist for the Vezina, not Vagina, as I heard on the radio here this week. He's a finalist for the Vezina, along with Connor Hellebuck, and I don't even know the third. Hellebuck's going to win it. And if there was ever any more proof that the playoffs were a different season than the regular season, that's it. He's been the worst goalie in the playoffs. Which, by the way, Bob isn't even in the top 10 in goals against average in the playoffs. It's amazing to me. There's 16 goalies, of course. Logan says, will Florida go to the Stanley Cup Finals? That's question 11.
You people got to stop thinking about this shit.
It's a Calgary thing.
It's a Florida thing. Stop it. Stop. How do you think who'd be a better opponent? Fucking last series wasn't even over yet. Stop thinking about that. I literally have no idea who Edmonton would even play because I refuse to think about that if they win. I don't even know if they're going to win. Stop thinking about that and talking about it.
This is why I asked for the helmet.
It's not you. It's
I'm aware.
Questions.
Yesterday it was me.
But this is what getting ahead of yourself. Like, who are the Dolphins going to play in the Super Bowl next year? What the fuck are you talking about? I don't know.
It's a Florida thing. Okay.
I don't know. Why don't people, the Dolphins fans don't say that?
No, they don't. But they know. Bure 1096 says, what are your thoughts on the goalie interference calls? And I appreciate, he writes in every week when we ask,
he's
right?
Awesome. He's so good.
He's awesome. Bure 1096. Listen, what do I think? She brought up the term earlier of egregious. John Cooper, as politely and diplomatically as possible, talked about how bad those 2 goal reversals were in Game 5. But when you say Gary Bettman has said call everything, it's like a speeding ticket. You contacted the goalie. It doesn't matter how egregious it is. The rule is you can't contact the goalie. But I'm looking at it as a Bob fan, a huge Bob fan, and a Florida fan. I thought Florida was going to win the series, so I didn't think the goalie interference calls were that bad. But if you're from a Tampa perspective, I'd probably be as upset as John Cooper. Can't contact the goalie, Sarina. Why is it such a big deal?
I think it's a big deal because the call is technically goaltender interference. And if you can't contact the goal, you can't even touch a goaltender anymore. That's what's pissing people off. It's pissing them off that the goaltender interference call has that rule. That's absurd. Rewind it about 15 minutes if you want to hear my opinion on officiating, because it's the same about that. That's part of the reason I'm like, this is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, but that's like getting mad at the cops for enforcing the law.
Those were terrible calls. The second one, Bob flopping all over. He sold that like you would not believe. Come on, man.
And John brought that up. He's like, the goalie quit on the play.
Exactly.
I was a little shocked that Bob did, but guess what? He got the call. They're only doing what's within the rules. I don't understand. You can't get mad at a cop for giving you a speeding ticket.
Okay, but with that argument, there's a reason that they brought in a penalty for diving. It's the same thing. Sometimes it's tripping, sometimes it's diving, sometimes it's a combination of both. So they brought in the rule.
I don't like that rule.
I don't care. There's dive. It's one or the other, right? It's one or the other.
That's dumb, but that's what's in the rule book.
No, but you believe that it should be one or the other. It's either a dive or it's a trip.
I've always said that.
Right. So if he quit on the play and he dove, why didn't he get a diving penalty?
Because he was contacted. So he's like, I was contacted, I'm out.
Right. So he should have got
difference.
But he dove. So he should have got a diving penalty.
No,
it should have been interference.
He interfered with his glove. So he's like, I'm out of this play because he touched me in the blue paint. That's what happened. We didn't dive at all.
Well, he flopped around. It's what's the term that they use to call it? It's not instigating. What's the penalty they call when someone dives?
Unsportsmanlike conduct.
It's embellishment.
He embellished
the play.
Yeah.
That's I think the argument from everybody's standpoint is that it's getting out of control. This is also I'm talking to the person that firmly believes that the Dallas Stars did not cheat to win the Stanley Cup in '97. It was a bad call.
Typical woman bringing up the past. It was 1999.
I'm sorry, not 99. I was wrong in my year, so I guess I'm wrong about all of it. But my point is, I
feel like you're losing the arguments. You're changing the target all over the place.
It's the
That's
same
what I
thing.
think.
They changed the rule after that year. So what's going to happen? I told you earlier, something big is going to happen, and they're going to change the rule again because those calls were terrible. They were terrible. They did not interfere with anything.
John Cooper said these weren't egregious contacts of the goalie, to paraphrase. And I feel like we're going back 3 minutes and saying the same. You contacted the goalie. You can't do that.
No, those were
Why
terrible
are you bitching?
Calls. They're terrible.
So, see, we don't agree. I often say if you piss both teams off, you've done a good job as a referee, and I was a certified hockey official. And only one team's mad in this series, Tampa, not Florida, nor should they be. Alexander Barkov fan page says, who is the MVP for both teams in the series? The first name that flashed into my mind was Matthew Tkachuk. He had 9 points, and that led the Panthers, along with Verhaeghe. Verhaeghe had 9 too.
No, the difference in the series was Barkov.
Or Bob.
Barkov played better in that series than he had in the last 2 months of the season. He was so good in the series. And just because Barkov, he's not a point guy. He doesn't put the puck in the net. He makes all the difference, though. Barkov was 100% the best player in my mind for the Panthers because he was consistently good.
No. I think if they gave an MVP the series, he would get it. I love what he said after, again, sitting in the news conference room. Maybe one day we'll roll the tape of those news conferences. I don't know if we want to do that or not, though. It takes away from you and me sitting here doing this.
They're probably so sick of listening to us. They're like, just play the tape.
But he said, he goes, on this team, nobody cares who scores the goals.
I believe that.
And I thought, that's awesome. He is so awesome, Alexander Barkov, just as a human being, let alone a captain.
He's not a goal scorer. He's not that guy that's trying to pad his stats. If he doesn't play well, the team doesn't play well. If he does play well, look at the difference.
And he can shoot like a bastard.
He didn't stop moving his feet the entire series.
Never does, though.
Yeah.
This is our last question, and we could take 12 minutes on it. I don't want to, but it's from Dave. He says, what are your thoughts on the John Cooper to the Toronto Maple Leafs rumors? And I prefaced Sarina before we left the house to come over here because this is just new. It just came up on Wednesday that I saw the insiders in Canada are saying, quote, there's noise around John Cooper in Tampa. And now it's been tied into that he's going to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they haven't even lost out to Boston yet. I had to sit down for a second and think about this because I can't imagine the Lightning without John Cooper. He's been there since at least 2013, if not longer. And he's been great. He's been awesome. He's people talk about John Cooper, and you all know this. Future Hall of Famer, John Cooper. It would be maybe hard for him to go to work knowing he's already in the Hall of Fame. I don't know. Maybe he wants a challenge. I had to sit down and think about it because it wasn't on my radar.
This is exactly what we're talking about. People in Canada talk about hockey so much that they run out of stuff to talk about.
So they make stuff up.
So they make stuff up. And they're like, I wonder if... I'm like, are you serious? First of all, why are you talking about this in the playoffs? Why are we having this conversation? It's like talking about Stamkos's deal in the middle of the season. He's like, can we not do this? You shouldn't be doing that, especially if you're in Toronto. What are you talking about? Your team is still in the playoffs. It's a ridiculous thing to be making stuff up and going from there.
And yet, it is exactly the same as football here, where the season's still going on, and they're talking about this head coach and that coordinator and this guy going into the transfer portal and this and that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the exact same thing. It's a human nature thing. It's a people thing. But you haven't answered if you think it might happen or if there's even anything to it.
Like I say all the time, anything can happen. Anyone can win a series. Anyone can win a Stanley Cup. Stamkos could go play with the Leafs. God only knows. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if Stamkos goes, Cooper might go or vice versa. Who knows?
Could you imagine?
Do the Leafs need a shakeup? Badly. The Leafs, you want to talk about who does the Panthers want to play? The Leafs have, in my opinion, a more talented team than the Panthers. They have more talented players. They're a mess. I don't think they would be. Having said that, if they come back and beat Boston, they're going to be on fire. So look out there. But it's different. It goes up to coaching. It goes to a whole bunch of different things. You can't blame the coach entirely. The players are responsible. But yeah, you never know. If Cooper goes somewhere, Stamkos might go somewhere. We've seen it happen.
That's what we will hopefully be talking about over the summer on this show. This is weird and wild. We've got to every topic that I wanted to. Got everything off my chest I wanted to. Explained your prediction before the series. Maybe I won't even ask you to do predictions again.
Would
that make you happy?
I have been telling this fool for years that I do not like to do predictions. And he's like, and I'm like, okay, fine, for the thing of the podcast.
That was the thing. I said nobody remembers, and she's like, yes, they do.
No, they do.
Thank you, by the way, Benny, for putting the DraftKings up on the screen there. We want to remind you we're brought to you by DraftKings, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. The crown is yours, but they're introducing the no sweat bet for new customers up to $1,000. Get a bonus bet back in the amount of your original wager if your first bet doesn't hit. Use the promo code THPN. That's the Hockey Podcast Network at DraftKings. Again, the crown is yours. Our guests, when we have them here, are brought to you by Beach House Pompano, a scenic rooftop restaurant on the shores of Pompano Beach. And right across the street, Burresco, a tropical outpost serving only the freshest tacos and lush jungle vibes, located at 225 North Pompano Beach Boulevard. You good?
I can just hear the sodas clanking over here from the next.
I'm having a tough time concentrating.
We're just kidding. We're sober. We don't care. But yeah, we can hear the Coronas clanking. It's time to get off the air.
We need a goalie. We'll see you next week here on the Cats and Bolts podcast.